This is the Quiet Files. Some stories were not forgotten. They were buried. May 25, 1849, Harris County, Georgia. On the wily Edward Jones plantation, a child entered the world without sight. No dawn, no faces, no sky, only sound. He was born Thomas Greene. His mother, Charity, was enslaved. His father, Domingo, called Mingo, was enslaved. Before he could crawl, before he could speak, before he could understand the shape of his own hands, he was already owned. Blindness in that world was not sympathy, it was inconvenience. A child who could not see could not pick cotton, could not plow, could not be worked the way the system demanded. So he was left alone, left near the cabins, left to wander edges of rooms, left in silence. Except it was never silent for him. In 1850, before he turned 1 year old, he and his parents were sold. Not relocated, not hired, sold. Transferred as property to a Columbus, Georgia lawyer, General James Neal Bethune, a man who publicly advocated for secession, a man who believed the system that purchased this child should endure. His name began to change. Thomas Greene, Thomas Bethune, Thomas Wiggins. When you are property, even your name is negotiable. Even your identity can be rewritten. He could not see the fields. He could not see the house on the hill. He could not see the men who rode past on horseback. But he could hear it all. The scrape of boots, the crack of wood, the low murmur of voices carried in humid southern air. Blindness did not shrink his world. It rearranged it. And in that darkness, something unusual began to grow. He could not see the fields, but he could hear the wind move through them. He could not see the sun rise over Georgia clay, but he could feel its warmth shift across his skin and know where the open sky ended and the cabin began. Blindness did not make his world smaller. It made it different. While other children were trained for labor, he was considered unfit for it, too blind to work the rows, too limited to be useful in the fields. So he was left behind, left near the cabins, left near doorways, left to wander the edges of rooms that were never truly his. But what others mistook for emptiness was attention. He listened the way other children looked. He mapped rooms through echo. A footstep 3 boards away, he knew the distance. A door hinge turning, he knew its weight. Breathing patterns told him who had entered before they ever spoke his name. If left alone, he did not sit quietly. He experimented. He struck pots with spoons, dragged chairs slowly across wooden floors, tapped walls, clapped once, and listened to how the sound returned to him. He wasn't making noise, he was studying it. The crow of a rooster at dawn, he could repeat it perfectly. The whistle of wind through a crack in the wall, he could mimic its pitch. A woman's laugh, a man clearing his throat, the exact rhythm of rain striking tin roofing during a southern storm. Give him 10 minutes of conversation, and he could return it word for word, tone for tone, inflection for inflection. Years later, after attending a political rally in support of Stephen Douglas, he could still recreate the speech. Not just the words, the cadence, the applause, the hecklers, the rise and fall of the crowd like a living instrument. He struggled to communicate his own needs clearly. Speech often failed him. He relied on gestures, on sounds, on fragments. Yet inside him was an archive, a vault of sound so precise, so detailed, that it defied explanation. And all of this before he ever touched a piano. There was a room in the main house he was not meant to occupy. A room where the air felt different. Polished wood, tall windows, lace curtains shifting gently in Georgia heat. And in that room, there was a sound he had never heard before. Structured, layered, alive. A piano. He had heard music before, hymns, voices rising together in small wooden spaces. But this was something else. The buffoon daughters practiced in the afternoons, measured scales, careful repetitions, notes rising, notes falling. And somewhere outside the doorway, a blind child stood perfectly still, listening. He did not fidget, he did not speak, he absorbed. Every key had weight, every chord created shape. The room had dimensions he could feel through vibration alone. They say the first time he approached the instrument, he did not rush it. He moved slowly, hands brushing polished wood as if learning the surface of a new world. He found the bench, sat, eyes closed, as they had always been. His fingers hovered above the keys, not guessing, waiting. Then he pressed one. A single note rang out, clear, unmistakable. He pressed another, and another. Within moments, he was no longer searching. He was repeating, reproducing what he had heard with impossible precision. A child who had never seen the instrument, playing it, flawlessly. The room fell silent, not because he was commanded to stop, because something extraordinary had just occurred. He did not read music. He did not know theory. He did not know the names of the notes beneath his fingertips. He only knew sound, and sound knew him back. The miracle did not stay in that room. Word spread. Not about a child, about a spectacle. By the age of 8, he was no longer simply Thomas. He was Blind Tom. A name turned into advertisement. A condition turned into branding. General James Bethune hired him out to a concert promoter, a man named Perry Oliver, and the tours began. Cities, crowds, newspapers. They placed him on stages beneath chandeliers and gaslights, before audiences who stared before they listened. He would walk to the piano, eyes closed, head tilted slightly upward. Then he would play. Hymns, waltzes, opera, popular songs, complex classical pieces he had heard only once, and he would reproduce them flawlessly, sometimes after a single listening. They tested him, played 3 songs at once on separate pianos. He would repeat them, in order, without error. Audiences gasped, newspapers marveled, money poured in. Up to $100,000 a year, an enormous fortune for the 19th century, a fortune he never touched. He performed as often as 4 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening, sometimes night. The schedule did not bend for fatigue. He was marketed as a curiosity, a wonder, a phenomenon, but also as something less than human. Newspapers compared him to animals, to creatures, to spectacle. From animal to artist, the advertisements claimed. The language revealed more about the nation than it did about him. They called him genius. They called him prodigy. They called him extraordinary. But they did not call him free. He learned thousands of pieces, hymns, folk songs, classical repertoire, an archive of nearly 7,000 compositions stored in memory. He could sit at a piano and unleash a storm of sound. And yet, between performances, he was still controlled, still guarded, still owned in everything but legal definition. The applause was thunder, the contracts were quiet. He filled concert halls, he built fortunes, he dazzled presidents. But the hands that guided him to the stage were never his own. The world saw brilliance, the system saw revenue. And Blind Tom, the child who once clapped in a cabin to hear the echo return, now filled entire cities with sound. Yet the echo of freedom still had not come back to him. The war ended. Slavery, on paper, ended with it. Chains were broken, laws were rewritten, the nation declared a new beginning. Thomas Wiggins was now legally free. But freedom, for him, arrived in ink, not in action. The contracts remained, the handlers remained, the guardians remained. Men who argued over who would manage him, who would protect him, who would control the fortune made in his name. Courtrooms debated his future, not with him, around him. He had filled theaters across America, played for presidents, memorized thousands of compositions, a musical archive living inside one mind. Yet the money, the enormous sums earned from 4 performances a day, never rested in his hands. A fortune estimated in the hundreds of thousands, enough to secure generations. But Blind Tom did not sign contracts. He did not negotiate fees. He did not choose his schedule. He was guided, directed, moved from city to city. Legal freedom did not grant him control of his own brilliance. As the years passed, the crowds thinned. The novelty faded. America moved on to new spectacles. But he remained what he had always been, a man with closed eyes and limitless sound inside him. He continued to play, continued to astonish, continued to exist inside a system that never quite released him. When he died in 1908, the headlines were quieter than they had once been. No thunderous applause, no packed theaters, just a name carved into stone. Thomas Greene Wiggins, a child born into bondage, a genius who filled concert halls, a man who never fully owned the stage beneath his hands. History remembers the music, but it must also remember the cost. He was born in darkness, but the darkness was never inside him, it was around him. A nation that could hear his brilliance, but could not see his humanity. They called him Prodigy. They called him Phenomenon. They called him Miracle. And still, they managed him, marketed him, profited from him. He filled concert halls. He stunned presidents. He memorized thousands of compositions with impossible precision, a mind unlike any the century had seen. And yet, the same century could not imagine him fully free. Freedom arrived on paper, but ownership lingered in practice. Contracts replaced chains, guardians replaced masters, applause replaced the auction block. The language changed, the control did not. Thomas Greene Wiggins conquered sound, but he never fully conquered the system that contained him. And maybe that is the part history struggles with. Not that he was extraordinary, but that he was extraordinary in spite of the nation that claimed him. We remember the music. We celebrate the genius. But justice requires something more. It requires us to say his full name, Thomas Greene Wiggins, to understand the cost behind the applause, and to admit that sometimes the greatest triumph is not the performance, it is surviving the stage. This is The Quiet Files.